I'm sure some of you have seen the Drudge Report this morning, and during the course, I guess probably just in the last hour to a hour and a half, 90 minutes, we'll say, there has been a brand new headline that has popped up. The lead headline at Drudge suggests that Bill Clinton, what do they call it with John Edwards? A love child. That Bill Clinton fathered a son who is now a grown man. Interestingly enough, he appears to be a person of color, which would mean mixed race. Bill Clinton happened to be involved in all of this. And the guy says, yeah, I'm really his son, and I've been told for years that to keep it quiet, hush, hush, but I'm coming forward now and letting people know. There are a lot of people out there who thought that Bill Clinton was a bit of one of those himself all of his life, but as I understand, his parents were married. His father was killed in a car accident before he was born, actually. His father was a guy by the name of Blythe, and then his mother remarried, and her new husband, Clinton, adopted the baby that was on the way. So that's why he has the name William Jefferson Clinton and not William Jefferson Blythe. But it could be said that his son would be the real deal. I mean, you may think his dad is one in a figurative sense, but his son would literally be one of those illegitimate. There's another word for that my I used to hear on my family a lot, and it was never meant about illegitimacy. When somebody would talk about a guy at work, they would refer to him as that no good. Do I have to explain this anymore beyond that? 8 minutes after 8 o'clock. Now, you're going to find the mainstream media probably doing the exact same thing it did with John Edwards, and that is go into denial or ignore this story. But we do have an opportunity to prove this because we have DNA evidence on that blue dress, which is what? Isn't it in a museum somewhere now? If it's not still in an evidence locker. So if the story is true, we can prove it, I would assume. I mean, well, DNA evidence gives you, a 99% certainty. And you can go from there. Or it would disprove it. And you would think with a few weeks to go before Election Day that we would have an opportunity for someone to take a closer look at all of this. Now, Bill Clinton will likely deny it. But if it's true and he just comes out and says, well, yeah, I'll tell you what, I did it. Had a lot of fun while I was at it. I'm no different there than that old Mr. Trump. He's a big hound dog, too. Then probably it would go away in a few days. But in the Clinton universe, you deny, you deny, you deny. And you keep lying until you actually have no more time. You're boxed into a corner, and then you come out and you say, I'm very, very sorry. And then you get away with it because media says, well, he said he was sorry. It's 47. Bill Colley with you this morning on Top Story on News Radio 1310, KLIX and newsradio1310.com. Randy Staples from Idaho Weekly Briefing coming up in just a little over half an hour with us. A lot to talk about with Randy this morning about some stories here in the state of Idaho, some of those which may impact you, especially if you like to hunt or fish or snowmobile, or you just like to go out in the wilderness and backpack. So that's on the way, as I say, in about 1/2 hour. But gosh, the weekend was exciting when it came to politics. If nothing else, this story about Donald Trump not paying taxes, we don't know for sure. We know that in 1995, that was 21 years ago, we should point out, we were still in the first Clinton administration. 21 years ago, and Donald Trump lost nearly $1 billion in business, so he had a tax write-down. None of this is uncommon. But the New York Times says it could well mean that he didn't pay his taxes for the next 20 years. In other words, we don't know this, and being in media, we would only like to infer because we don't like Mr. Trump. There's also some serious debate going on right now about whether the New York Times broke the law by publishing this information. You got to realize a guy like Trump was a billionaire. His tax forms, they're thicker than War and Peace. The New York Times has one page from 3 different state tax returns. Trump was doing business in Connecticut, New York, and New Jersey. So they got their hands on one page from each return, and now they're surmising this. But the fact of the matter is they're not there to report the news. They're out to get Trump. In other words, vote for Hillary. Vote for our girl. We can have more abortions, and we can marry horses, cows, and pigs, and make America great again that way. That's all they're looking to do at all of your big East Coast newspapers. 11 minutes after 8 o'clock. Bill Colley with you, 49 right now. I have this today as well. We had heard that Julian Assange, the guy from WikiLeaks, he was going to release a trove of emails this week about Hillary Clinton. He said these would sink her. before Election Day. And then all of a sudden, at the last minute yesterday, he came out and said, I will not be going out on the balcony of, what is it, the Ecuadorian embassy in England. That's where he's holed up because a lot of people want him. And he says he's not going to go out in public and do this because he's worried that Hillary Clinton's people would have him killed. Now, your friends in mainstream media are saying, oh, that's another one of those ridiculous conspiracy theories. How dare he say that? He obviously has nothing and he's just trying to cover his butt. Well, he says now he is going to release these things by video conference while he's in London, but in a video conference, appearing at a video conference in Berlin. So we will see these things perhaps as early as tomorrow. Now, these could be, who knows, maybe they're the 33,000 missing emails. But to say that Hillary Clinton would have no interest in killing this guy, mainstream media better stand back, because a writer at something called TruePundit.com posted this yesterday. Clinton met with staff on Tuesday, November 23, 2010, shortly after 8 a.m. on the Mahogany Row at the State Department, to attempt to formulate a strategy to avert Assange's plans to release an enormous batch of 250,000 secret cables, which he ended up doing. These were cables from the U.S. government dating all the way back to 1966, and he managed to release all of these, and it made the United States government, well, it looked bad, but we know that our government is involved in espionage, and every country in the world does it. I don't know that it looked that bad. It just, you couldn't go around claiming that, we would never do those things, when everyone knows we do those things all over the world, and we have been doing those things all over the world for decades. You've got enemies out there. Sometimes going and throwing a bomb on top of them isn't the best way to solve the problem. You find other ways to do it. You have someone else throw the bomb at them, or you undermine them. There's any number of things that can be done and have been done to do that throughout history. But this is what Clinton had to say that day, and this is a quote. Can't we just drone this guy? Now, you'd be asking yourself, all right, maybe she's being a wise guy? The statement drew laughter, the writer says, from the room, which quickly died off when the secretary kept talking in a terse manner, sources said. Clinton said Assange, after all, was a relatively soft target, quote, walking around, unquote, freely and thumbing his nose without any fear of reprisals from the United States. So if that's going on, and there's a date and there's a time affixed to this, these people have been doing their research, and here's a document related to it. It goes on. Anne-Marie Slaughter apparently is somebody who was working at the State Department, sent out an email about it, and so we now know some details. So maybe Julian Assange is right. Maybe they are coming to get him. But you would think that even if they kill him, that his organization has planted this thing in so many places now in the electronic age that somebody else would come forward and release it. Remember, he's the guy who also claimed last month, 2 months ago now, it was in August, we're in October, and I apologize for that. He's the guy who claimed in August, while he was doing a television interview, that the Democrat Party staffer, who was all of 27 years old and killed in what looked like at first a robbery in Washington, D.C., and it turned out nothing was stolen from the guy, had actually been the source of the leak at the Democrat National Committee, that Assange was able to pick up all of those emails from the DNC and release and embarrass the Democrat Party. And according to him, somebody decided to kill that guy because he embarrassed Hillary Clinton and all of her handlers. Meanwhile, speaking of the tax issue, because I know the liberals out there listening are going to be screaming and crying about this because somewhere, somehow, somebody might be making more money than they are and may be getting a tax break that they aren't getting. This comes from a publication called Zero Hedge, authored by Tyler Durden. Clinton campaign admits Hillary used same tax avoidance scheme as Trump. Well, this is a little awkward, he writes, with the leaked 1995 Trump tax returns. Scandal focused on the billionaire's huge net operating loss and how it might have legally enabled him to pay no taxes for years. We now discover none other than Hillary Clinton utilized a $700,000 loss to avoid paying some taxes in 2015. And he goes on to say, a look back at Clinton's tax returns, proudly displayed by the campaign, proving she has nothing to hide, shows something awkward on page 17. While not on the scale of Trump's business operating loss, Hillary Clinton, like many wealthy individuals, is taking advantage of a legal scheme to use historical losses to avoid paying current taxes. Now, you bring that up. The one thing Donald Trump, people people liberals don't take into account is he employs tens of thousands of people. They pay taxes. If he had not been able to take the write down on a loss of nearly $1 billion and then he had gone out of business, then Donald Trump would no longer be employing those tens of thousands of people and they wouldn't be paying taxes. This is how it works. People who actually invest money in our economy and then grow the economy, if we put them all out of business because of their losses, nobody would be left to grow the economy. It is risk-taking that actually helps us create the new jobs and the new industries that we have. Rudolph Giuliani was appearing on CNN, the Clinton News Network, over the weekend. He got into quite a, what you might call, how shall we call it, peeing match with the host of the show, Jake Tapper, over all of this. If I could, I'd like to share a little bit of that this morning because I think it tells us a little bit about where we happen to be going and how the Democrats are trying to say that anybody with money out there is evil. It's the French Revolution all over again. Heads will start rolling soon, literally.
Income taxes,
most Americans. I don't know. You don't know most Americans, and I don't know most Americans.
I know that most Americans pay their federal income taxes, sir. Let me ask you something. In 2012.
I also know that most Americans take advantage of every deduction and every legal opportunity there is to save some taxes so they don't have to pay as much as they're paying to the government.
In 2012,
I know most Americans would rather be paying lower taxes under Donald Trump than 10% or 20% more under Hillary Clinton.
In 2012, Donald Trump tweeted, half of Americans don't pay income tax despite crippling government debt. He is in that half that does not federal income taxes despite crippling government debt. When he rails against the junky infrastructure, when he rails against LaGuardia Airport, when he talks about how bridges are collapsing, is he not responsible, at least in part, for the fact that these things are not being repaired? He's not at all.
Absolutely not.
No.
The law is responsible for it. If you have a set of laws, you live by those laws. And the reality is you are ignoring completely the fiduciary obligation that he has to all the people around him to run his business at the lowest possible expense. Every businessman takes advantage of it, including Warren Buffett. And Warren Buffett thinks we should be paying 90% in taxes. So why doesn't he voluntarily send in that extra 40%? Let him voluntarily make out a check and send it in.
Hey, there you go. Yeah, if you want to pay more taxes, liberal, go ahead and do it. You know, the rest of us will do what we can, but if you'd like to actually tithe to your God, that is the U.S. government in Washington, you go right ahead. And, in fact, we'll applaud you for doing it. What did Trump say last week when Hillary Clinton started going on in the debate about this? He pointed out, he said, even if I had paid these taxes, the government would have squandered those too. Spot on. We've got more on the way. Bill Colley with you this morning on Top Story on News Radio 1310 KLIX and newsradio1310.com. 20 minutes after 8 o'clock, it's 48. On our way to a piping hot day today, maybe 53 or 54. We should point out that Hillary Clinton was going to be campaigning today with Bernie Sanders, but the joint appearances have been canceled because Sanders says he was a little uncomfortable with her remarks about his supporters. She was accurate. She said they were all living in mom and dad's basement. 824, Bill Colley with you on Top Story on News Radio 1310, KLIX and newsradio1310.com. Thanks for listening to us this morning. And it's 48, on our way into the mid-50s before the end of the day. If you're listening, thank you. If you're having difficulty, you need to get in touch with Dr. Christine Pickup at Mount Harrison Audiology in Rupert. She would like to open your world to new sounds and experiences. A new hearing device is available which works with the brain to help those with hearing loss hear more naturally than any previous aid on the market. And she's offering a free 2-week trial with these new devices. Call today to schedule your personal fitting appointment. Open your world to better hearing. You can call Mount Harrison Audiology. The telephone number 312-0957. That's 312-0957. Telephone number to reach our program today, 736-0300. 736-0300. You're listening to Bill Colley on Top Story on News Radio 1310, KLIX, and newsradio1310.com, and you're on the air.
Good morning, Bill. Bill, something's wrong with your email service. I tried to send you a couple different emails and said that it was not possible anymore. So I was glad to hear your voice this morning, because I thought, well, maybe the liberals in the community decide to run you out of town on a rail. But anyway, it's really interesting how the media is totally in the tank for Hillary, and her vice presidential nominee is Tim Kaine. Boy, birds of a feather flock together, because he's as radical as she is. He's one of the 8 congressmen, senators that left when Netanyahu spoke from Israel, and he's been very anti-American in all of his activity, pro, immigration with pro-jihad, really, because he's supporting some of the people and groups, and they've been financing some of his campaigns. But Bill, we got to remember that Hillary is a big disciple, along with Obama, of socialist, communist Saul Alinsky, and he wrote that book, Rules for Radicals.
Heard that one before, yeah.
Yeah, and Hillary wrote a 92-page honors thesis about Alinsky. And, the 3 things that Hillary's been doing, and all these lefties, is that they use polarization of the people. We see that happening. Demonization of the opposition. Boy, we certainly see that. And if that doesn't work, then deception to lie as the end justifies the means. And those are the 3 main tenets of Rules for Radicals. I mean, it goes in more detail, obviously, but this is exactly what's been happening on. The demonization, the lies, and split the country's never been, in my lifetime, never been more divided than it is now. And
I hope, in fact, in the next hour, I'm going to share a couple of comments from of all people, Glenn Beck, on that issue. I know he's currently no longer maybe the darling of American conservatives, but he made some strong comments about all of that yesterday on NBC's Meet the Press. Thank you much for the call. Telephone number 736-0300, 736-0300. In fact, Beck and Michael Moore both made an appearance on NBC's Meet the Press yesterday. What Moore had to say when it comes to this election would surprise you if you know what his background is. And then what Beck had to say would surprise you as well. And we get an opportunity in the next hour of the program. I'll share some of that. You're up next, and you're on Top Story on News Radio 1310 KLIX, as well as on our website, newsradio1310.com. Go ahead.
Good morning, Bill. How are you doing?
Well, I'm wonderful, but what's the point?
Well, are you familiar with Judge Learned Hand?
Vaguely.
Okay. Well, you've been talking a couple of points about Donald Trump's tax returns this morning, and Judge Learned Hand was he ended his career, I believe, as a Second Circuit Court of Appeals judge. And he had made the comment about taxes, how basically it's everybody's obligation to pay taxes, but it's your responsibility to pay your minimum fair share. I don't know what everybody's hooing and hawing about Donald Trump's taxes for. If the guy only pays 10 or 15%, more power to him. I don't like giving the federal government any more money than I have to, but I understand that's how the federal government works as well.
Yeah, and I thank you. He has said in the past, if you don't like it, change the laws. He's been very upfront about that. Thank you much for the call. We've got a hard break coming up in about 30 seconds. But he hasn't made a secret of any of this. He has all along said this is how this system works when he explains how he bought people with campaign donations. But he's always framed it this way. It's legal, and until you people want to make a change, then people are going to continue to do it. People like me, this is how a business works in America, especially big business. It's not being at all dishonest about it. Coming up on 8:30, Bill Colley with you on Top Story. By the way, people say, Bill, why don't you want to say good morning back and forth? There's 77 minutes of actual talk time that I have every morning. And I sit here counting up all of that time, and I never get to half of what I've got. Because it's how's the family? Oh, the family's good. Yeah. What do you think of the weather over there in Buell today? Yeah, it's not bad. Oh, consultants, and I'll tell you, I used to work with one, say, just get to the point. It's called talk radio, and it's about getting to the point. It's not a tea party. Well, not in the sense of the political movement. Anyway, more coming up in just a couple of minutes.